Hey everybody, it's your girl Tawana B with Not Your Normal Conversation. I'm sitting here with DA Rollins, and I was talking to DA Rollins before this interview, and I just want to make it clear to everybody that she's here to answer all questions. She doesn't back down from those questions, but I ask that we be respectful of her as a human being and as a person who wants to address the community in a way that's helpful to everybody. So with that being said, I want to introduce you guys to DA Suffolk County's DA, Rachel Rollins. Rachel, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. I'm excited about what we're going to talk about.
I'm excited to have you here, and I thank you for answering my call. And just so everyone knows, she talks to everybody. She's very personable and she's very approachable. So in knowing that, then we can move forward and say that the questions that you ask her on the live feed, I'm going to send them to her office. She's going to answer them, and then I'm going to come back again on a show and answer all of your questions. She's willing to do that. So we're just going to take it from there. And DA Rollins, we'll just jump right into it because I know you have a hefty schedule today. So I just want to ask you, you have quite a resume. So before becoming Suffolk County DA, you served as a field district attorney with the National Labor Relations Board in Boston, but you also participated in assistant district attorney rotation in Brockton District Court. And you also worked as an assistant United States attorney with the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston, handling a variety of cases. But furthermore, you were selected by Governor Patrick Deval's administration as the first person of color to serve as the general counsel of Massachusetts. Now, what made you, with that impressive resume, decide that you were going to run for Suffolk County DA?
So, yeah, I decided to run when I was about 46 years old, and I had had a really great career up until that point. I went to law school locally at Northeastern and clerked and had a lot of really great jobs. I was tired, Tawana. I was tired of turning the TV on. And this is many years before George Floyd, many years before Ahmaud Arbery, many years before Breonna Taylor. It was 10 iterations of them before, right? Where I was just tired of seeing people that look like me and you, or that they could be in our families, having interactions with law enforcement and losing their lives. And then not having any charges brought, and then not being able to sue the police because of qualified immunity. As a trained lawyer, I didn't just see the tremendous loss of a life, which is
Right,
huge. I
right,
also saw the lack of government performing for an entire segment of society, Black people, right? We pay taxes into this system and it
right,
doesn't benefit us the same way it does others, right? Our taxes pay for the mayor and the chief of police and the police department and the court system and the DAs. And if all they do is harm us or not help us when we need it
right,
and kill us, like, come on, it's just
right.
not fair. So that's why I said, that's it. I'm not going to argue any longer. I'm not going to yell at my TV and, shake my fist at it. I'm going
Right.
to shut up and I'm going to run for office myself and I'm going to change the system from the inside. And that's what we did.
Absolutely. Now, when you first became Suffolk County DA, you had a list of things that you wanted to change because I do recall now, just so you know, when you were running, I was incarcerated, so I was not allowed to vote for you. But I did feel like your campaign was to change things, right? And so, have you made those changes? And if not, what are the barriers that have stopped you from making those changes?
Were you at the forum that we had at the Suffolk County House of Corrections, or were you at a DOC?
I was at a DOC, but
Okay.
I did actually get a chance to review you at the Suffolk County House of Corrections. And I thought that that was very personable for you guys to do that so that people can see you up close and personal and see what you had to offer. And the
Yeah.
reason why I asked you that, DA Rollins, is because I know a lot of times when politicians, before when they're running, they say, hey, I'm going to do all of these things. But I think we as a society and a community sometimes don't understand the roadblocks and the barriers that you come up against, even though you want to change some things. It may
Yeah.
not be the right time, the right circumstances, or you're just hitting a brick wall. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that.
So one of the things I think, Tawana, that was different about me was when I ran for office, I met with tons of people in the community, right?
Right,
I met with returning citizens. I met with, members of law enforcement. I met with the criminal defense bar. I met with victims' families. I met with I mean, you name it, judges, probation officers, every single person that touched the clergy, that touched the system.
Right.
And I basically said, like, and even abolitionists that believe we shouldn't have jails, police, anything at all. Everyone that would meet with me, I would. And I said, if you had a magic wand and could change, and I'm talking about the municipal and district courts, which people call like the people's courts, right? Where we have a lot more discretion, so I said, what would you change, right? And they're, to the person, they would say things like, there's just so much wasted time on these unnecessary, are they crimes? Yes, but they are non-violent, non-serious things that get people clogged up in the system, right?
Absolutely.
Where overwhelmingly what really brings them to the system is they are in the middle of a mental health crisis, either have a substance use disorder, have food or housing insecurity, or are homeless. Not all, but a lot of people fall into that in our municipal and district courts. And rather than penalizing them for that,
Right.
why aren't we saying, okay, non-violent, non-serious crime, no victim. And I'm not talking about the community at large. I'm not talking about a stabbing or a shooting or a rape or a murder where there is a known discernible human that was harmed there. This is like the generic, you were trespassing and that makes it bad in Dorchester. Really?
Right.
For me, I just said, with my limited resources, am I going to waste or spend all of my time on those 15 or so types of crimes? Trespassing, driving on a suspended license, possession. I'm not talking about you're in a cartel with thousands of pounds of, heroin. No, I'm talking about you are a visible user, who you don't need to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist to know that. Why are we wasting taxpayer dollars putting you at South Bay when we should be putting you in a program where you can get treatment? I want to take those resources and put them to the over 1,000 unsolved homicides we have in Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, and Revere. Overwhelmingly Boston, right? So what I did was, after I met with everyone, I said, what would you change? I came up with a list with the help of amazing criminal defense lawyers and advocates and, activists. And then I said, I'm going to put it on my website 6 weeks before my election, my primary election, because there were 5 Democrats and we had to, only one was going to emerge to meet the Republican that was waiting for the general election. Absolutely. I put it on my website and I said, I want you to know who I'm going to be, not if, but when I win. I want you to, eyes wide open, vote for me, because this is what I'm going to do. And I got a lot of people that said, wow, politicians usually don't promise. They're vague with their promises, so they can later say, like, I don't think I said it that way. It's like, no, it's written right here. This is what I'm going to do. And then we won out of that 5 with 42% of the vote. The next person had about 20 something. So we won with almost 20 points. And then we beat the Republican with 82% of the vote. And then within 3 months of joining office, Tawana, I issued what's called the Rollins memo, which instead of being a 1-page promise, it was a 66-page written in plain language. So you don't have to be, a judge on the Supreme Judicial Court to understand it. You can be my mom, who's a nurse, but not a lawyer, my daughter, who's 16. And I like to say, if you can enter the criminal legal system at 12, we need to make sure we're writing things so that 12-year-olds can understand it. Because if I can put you in DYS or have a probation officer or DCF oversight, you're part of the system and you're part of the solution too, as far as I'm concerned. So that's what we did. And we put it in writing so that we can be held accountable, but more importantly, so the community understands it. And then we made sure we have town halls 4 times a year. I come out. I mean, I'm in the community all the time, but I have literally just me and my senior executive team in Roxbury, in Mattapan, in Winthrop, in Chelsea was 2019. We've had a couple virtual ones because COVID's crazy this year, but I want to explain. I want to answer any question, even if they dislike me, even if it's something stupid that they want to say that's personal about me. Okay, that's not about my job. I'll answer it offline. Do you have a question about me being the DA or any policies we have? But,
Right.
that's what I wanted to be, is an accessible, honest, authentic leader.
Right. And that's the reason why I invited you on this podcast, because I feel like at this point, what you want is what I'd like to see for the community, especially the Black and Brown people. Because we as a whole, sometimes, in the community where people are suffering from poverty, some people can't even read and write, Rachel, to be able to know what your policies and procedures really are. So, like you said, from the beginning, they're angry at the system for the injustice. And that makes it even harder for them to understand. Which brings me to the next question. Have you encountered a failure of respect or lack of respect in the decision you've made, or your opinions from your colleagues or the police department because you're a minority woman?
Yeah. So, goodness. Yes. Let me tell you back to what you said about can't read or write. I really believe as elected officials, it's our job to explain it to you, right?
Thank you.
Look, I'm the DA, but I'm also a mom of a 16-year-old and the guardian of two of my nieces as a result of those very issues we talked about.
Absolutely.
We've been honest with each other. You were in jail at one point with one of my youngest sister. I have siblings that have unfortunately cycled in and out of the criminal legal system. Some with choices they've made, others that did not believe they had a choice at all and found themselves in a circumstance where they had to make a decision, and
Right.
they did.
Right.
But none of them or you are defined by that very moment, right? The people that think they're the best, stop defining yourself by your best moment and stop defining yourself by your worst moment. It's usually somewhere in between that. So of course I've encountered challenges to my authority. So as the district attorney of Suffolk County, there's 11 DAs in Massachusetts,
Correct.
11 different counties. We are each the chief law enforcement officer of our county. So Suffolk is Boston, Chelsea, Winthrop, Revere. So it's hard. There's never been a woman ever in the history of Suffolk County, which dates back to 1806. The DA's office started, right? Man, 15 men, and then I won my election. And then there's never been a woman of color, of any color at all, in all of Massachusetts. So I'll be honest, in Suffolk County, we have a Black sheriff, we have a Black commissioner, we have a Black U.S. Marshal, all right, which is federal, the U.S. Attorney's Office, the marshals. If you've seen the Harrison Ford movie, U.S. Marshal with, that movie, right? And Wesley Snipes, right? So, we have a Black female chief of our Supreme Judicial Court, Kim Budd. So we have representation with respect to race, but there are very few women, if any at all, in leadership in law enforcement. It is incredibly male dominated. And so there's been a lot of time where, I've had to gently and then sometimes not so gently remind people that, right, when Dan Conley had this job, you didn't try to jump in and do that. You just let Dan do his job. Why do you think you should be doing that with me, right? And I think the elephant in the room is we are both Black women, right? I have to be excellent in order for me to even get a shot. I have to be 2 to 3 times better than mediocre people that fail upward, right? They lose a job and miraculously get an even better job. That doesn't happen for us. We are only promoted and hired on performance, not promise and potential, which men frequently are, and certain men in particular frequently are. So look, I've had to push back, and full disclosure, I am a Black woman. My dad is from Ireland. Mayo, Ireland is where his family is originally from. Second generation, my dad. My mom's family is from Barbados. Shout out to Barbados, right? First generation, both of her parents are from there. I'm biracial, but no one ever looks at me and says, Rachel, that Irish DA in Suffolk County. No, they think I'm Cape Verdean, Dominican, Puerto Rican, or something, but they know I'm a woman of color. And, I bring that with me to work every single day. I bring the fact, Tawana, that I have, and I'm not ashamed of it. I don't
Right.
wear it as a badge of honor, but I am not ashamed that I have prosecuted people in the same courthouse in the Moakley building that I watched my younger brother get sentenced in, right? And
Right.
walking through that metal detector as an assistant United States attorney felt very different than
Right.
walking through that metal detector as the loved one of a criminal defendant.
Absolutely.
And I was a beloved former employee of that office. So if I felt that way, Tawana, imagine what families feel that way. And add to that, if you are not fluent in English, you speak
Right.
Cape Verdean Creole or Vietnamese or Haitian Creole, are there people that are wanding you down and taking your cell phone and your ID that speak Haitian Creole? No.
Right.
Are there people that speak Vietnamese or Mandarin or French or, Urdu or any sort of Muslim language? No,
Right.
no. It. So you don't feel welcome when you don't see yourself in these places. And I get it. The DA's office is usually not an office you ever want to see, right? Because we're usually coming because you've been prosecuted, you've been alleged to have committed a crime. What
Right.
I want to change about that is in my first year, Tawana, we gave out over $100,000 in grants to the community. And when I inherited this office, the community used to be exclusively West Roxbury,
Yes.
South Boston, and Charlestown. Are they parts of Suffolk County? Of course they are.
Right.
Do they see terrible bouts with substance use disorder and overdoses? Yes, they do.
Right.
What I made sure was that Roxbury, Dorchester, Mattapan, parts of Chelsea, and even Revere
Right.
got love as well, because
Absolutely.
we are also dealing with those substance use disorders all up and down Mass Ave and Melnia Cass, but we have gun violence, we have knife violence, right? We have domestic violence, we have human trafficking. I mean, we have all of these things that we're seeing, and unless you have a lived experience, you don't even see something wrong with West Roxbury, South Boston, and Charlestown. When you see that list, you're, oh, this is great.
Right.
If you're a person of color, you're like, I'm sorry. So the three, least diverse parts of our Suffolk County are getting the most of our money.
Right.
Can we at least make this partially fair, right? So you bet they still got some, but they didn't get all. We made sure we always look at things with an equity lens.
Absolutely. So there's a substantial amount of commentary in the world about releasing or providing resources and programming to nonviolent individuals. Now, this continues to not address the issue of violence, and the only way we will end mass incarceration is by addressing the violence. What is your perspective on the issue? Because I was formerly a nonviolent offender, but I found often when I would be at MCI Framingham, I was doing time with a woman who had a vehicular homicide. She did 18 months while I was serving a 5-year sentence. So again, the color of our skin to me separated us. She was white, I was black. Granted, it wasn't my first time, but when DAs talk about nonviolent offenses, it's harm against an institution and nobody died. So
100%. I mean, when we look, my first case, one of the first big cases I handled as a criminal defense attorney
Mhm.
before I got in the US Attorney's Office,
Right.
was a matter where the person we were representing, I'm not joking, was looking at 300 months. And I literally, Tawana, had to pull out a calculator and divide 300 by 12 and realize that was 25 American years for selling an 8-ball, right? And not to be mean, nobody's saying that doesn't cause harm and there aren't people, but we have seen, I'm the DA, I handle homicides, right?
Right.
The previous administration was willing to accept a second-degree murder, 15-year parole eligible with Aaron Hernandez for his double homicide, 15 years for a body, a
Right.
person you killed who is never coming back, 25 years for drugs. Yeah, it's so what we have to be willing to do is look at this huge ball of yarn that's super tight and slowly start, pulling out that thread and
Right.
undoing it. And for some people, it's just too overwhelming. Like, no, we just have to keep going the way it is. And if it's not broke, don't fix. No, it is broken. It's not broken for you. It's
Right.
broken for poor Black and brown communities and immigrants and people that can't afford or don't have a father that's a judge or an uncle that's a clerk or a this that's a that, right? And is able to whisk their way through the system. I am invested in that hard work of like pulling that first piece of thread out and then undoing it and having really tough conversations, right? So when we talk about substance use disorder, Tawana, not just when I'm looking at you and a
Right.
face that could be my, daughter or younger sister or something like that. When I'm in West Roxbury, when I'm in all law enforcement rooms, which overwhelmingly are male and don't have a lot of diversity in the room, some, but not a lot. I have no problem saying why I'm different is I have no problem admitting that the public health crisis you are now screaming about with opioids,
Right.
you didn't give a damn when it was crack and heroin in the 80s and 90s and the people looked like me or
Absolutely.
you.
Absolutely.
You didn't care because it couldn't have been your son or husband or daughter or grandmother or uncle or neighbor or boyfriend or husband, right? Because it didn't affect you, you didn't, or impact you, you didn't care. And that's where all the mass incarceration started. And we look now, and I'm Suffolk County, I'm at ground zero at Mass Ave and Melnia Cass.
Right.
And I want to make sure people understand. I think our community also thinks I'm not the police. The
Right.
police are the ones that arrest. They then bring it to me, and I either say, get that out of here, or okay, we'll look at that and see whether we can meet our burden in court with the evidence you've given us to prove this case to either a judge or a jury of that defendant's peers, right? So for me, I look at, Mass Ave and Melnia Cass and say, you know, we have so much harm that has come out of that area, right? Out of
Yes.
people where these drugs were pumped into our communities. We
Yes.
now know that it is a failed war on drugs. And, and we are still seeing generational harm, decades later of people that are branded with criminal histories, and or, have lost the opportunity at liberty and life and job and, and other things like that as a result of a felony conviction that we now know was really a health issue. So we have to say that out loud and then get to the work. But what I refuse to do is people love, even look at this stuff with the Capitol now, where all these Republicans are like, we need to be unified. It's, I'm the oldest of five. I would give you a great example. If my brother walked up to me and slapped me dead in the face and then said, from this moment forth, we're going to have peace. No, we're not. I'm
Yeah.
about to punch you dead in the, like you don't get to slap me and then say, from this point forward, we have peace. I get to slap you back. So it's just a matter of that. And we have always been the people slapped. We have never been the slappers, right?
Right.
And even when we are violent, right? When you look at this coming up this weekend, Martin Luther King weekend, and people look at Martin and look at and Malcolm,
Right.
Malcolm wasn't affirmatively violent. He was just
Right.
saying, if you hurt me, I'm punching you back. Like you don't get to do that to me, right? And there are certain factions of our country that only want Black pain and murder to be responded to with a smile and a silent protest, right?
Absolutely.
No, the answer is just no. And we are just such a vibrant, amazing people. We are the most culturally appropriated people on the planet, right?
Yes.
And everyone wants to be Black until it's time to be Black, right? And so for me, it's like you don't get to do that anymore. You're not going to dab or wear, bronzer and get all these injections, but then be silent when we're being murdered. And what I think is really messing with the establishment's head is we now have you on a podcast with all of this ability to zoom into people's lives and educate them in a snap second. We have Ayanna Pressley as a US Congressperson, right?
Yes.
Who is authentically herself when she shows up in that job. right?
Yes.
We have state representatives, men and women of color that are fluent in, you know, we need more, but Cape Verdean Creole. We have some that are fluent in obviously Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, other languages where they are bringing that immigrant and lived experience to work also as a person of color, informing our policies and our laws. We're slowly breaching right into where the halls of power are. But remember, Tawana, power is very rarely, if ever given, it's taken, right? And so we are doing that right now, and we are unapologetic about it. And that is what I think they are fearful of, right? Is they're used to these sort of subservient, silent, docile people that are their servants, literally, or figuratively, right? How dare you speak to me? How dare you do this? This is an affront to my rights. And, even watching all these people, I look at that Black police officer, that woman that was surrounded, and racial slurs, people throwing stuff at her, and a woman grabbed her and she, gave her a 2-piece with the biscuit right in the 1-piece, right?
Right.
And now she's going to get fired. Like, imagine if that was a Black Lives Matter crowd surrounding a white female police officer.
They would have been in body bags.
They would have been in body bags, and they would have already erected a statue to her in the place where the punch happened, right? So we're tired. We're tired.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. And again, DA Rollins, I applaud you in your stance to, like Ayanna Pressley, to say, I'm not going to back down. I'm going to post what I want on my personal page. I'm going to say what I want. I am a Black woman. I'm a mother. I'm a daughter. I'm somebody's sister. And I'm not going to stand for this anymore, because if I wasn't a DA, I would still be fighting for this cause. And I think that's
100%.
what people fail to realize about you, is that just because you're a DA doesn't mean that you're going to back down from a cause that you see that is wrong. I need people to understand, and this is what I utilize my platform for, is right is right and wrong is wrong. And if you want to destroy racism as a whole, stop looking at all Black people like they're the same. Stop looking at all DAs like they're the same. Stop looking at all police officers like they're the same, because there's good and bad in everybody and everywhere that you go, and that's never going to change. But if we want to not kick down doors, I'm talking about tear down buildings. I told you before we started this, I have a big personality. I don't know if wisdom, but I do. Let's tear down some buildings, people. Let's stop kicking down doors. We're kicking down the wrong doors. I've seen some people have tried to kick down your door. We're kicking down the wrong doors. We're going the wrong way. We're going the wrong way. You're actually going in the direction that we're going. And because you're a DA, I think that that's the challenge. People can't get past that to see who you really are. So I brought you here to humanize you, so to speak, like I want to humanize all convicted felons, because that doesn't make us the worst people in the world.
100%. And guess what? For me, the system, it's the Commonwealth versus Rachel Rollins, right? Rachel Rollins, some people's head explode when I say this. The Commonwealth includes the victim, the witness, the community, their family member, and guess what? Rachel Rollins is part of the Commonwealth too. And so is Rachel's family, right? So defense attorneys are myopically focused on their client. They have to zealously advocate for their client. They don't care about co-defendants. They don't care about, not to be mean, but they don't have to focus on the community or what is the best outcome overall for, Dorchester, Roxbury, Mattapan, Chelsea, Suffolk County. They have to focus on, we have to get Rachel Rollins the best result in this case, right? My job is bigger than that. And so even when people are charged with a crime, even when people are charged with a homicide, an armed assault with intent to murder, sexual assaults or rapes, right? You are innocent until proven guilty. I don't like cheating to win. I want to beat you. It's not a competition, but I want your defense counsel to have every piece of evidence we have. I don't want to be hiding things so we can win if you don't see this one. No, take it all. We will have a diverse jury. And I believe that when we present our case, even a very diverse jury with all, if you're a LGBTQ, if we have people from whatever community you are a member of, there are people you see that you feel, okay, they know me, then they know I'm better or bigger or more than just this moment, right? They know all the trauma I might have experienced or the systemic failure, whatever. I want to secure a guilty for that victim or that family that is harmed when it's fair, when you have good counsel representing you, when you have all the evidence that the government got constitutionally. I don't want to have beaten, confessions out of people. I don't want to have stolen or not gotten a warrant to break into your home and steal things. Like, we have to be held to a higher standard. And what I won't do is use my good name to say, we won't look back to make sure we did it right, or we get it wrong. We will always look back. And I don't care if it's under my administration or somebody else's. That's one. And number two, we need to make sure that we are ethical, constitutional, and doing what is best for the accused, right, and the community. Because this, Tawana, today in our violent crimes, today's victim is potentially tomorrow's witness, is potentially, next month's defendant. I have so many cases where the deceased in a homicide might have had an open case in my office, or the victim of, a crime might have been a witness in another crime, right? Like, it's just by the very nature of where we live, or what we, and we, again, remember, we have no control over where we're born, who we're born to, what street we live on. And as a result of just even some of those things, you might automatically be in a gang database because, you live on Humboldt Avenue, right? Or your older brother, and you're 11, 12, 13, 14, might have a felony, right? Or might have been affiliated with some other individuals that are, affiliated, right? So we have to make sure that we are aware of all of that when we make our decisions. And last thing is just how powerful we are as the government, because we have the ability to take away your liberty. And so we have to make sure we get it right if we're taking away even a day of your time.
Absolutely. So which leads me to this. The Sean Ellis case is back in the news. He's actually somebody that I'm going to interview in the next upcoming months. And just so you know, and you didn't know this, you went to school, I think, with my uncle, Joseph Feaster, Attorney Feaster.
Yes.
And so you guys have been on a lot of platforms together. See, I don't like to pull cards. I just want you to come and see me of your own accord. I don't want to have to tell you who I know. I just want you to come because I want us to have an open dialogue. And with that being said, I know you've been very active and very vocal about the position you play as far as Sean Ellis's case is concerned. You made sure to let the public know there will be no stone unturned. And if this was not okay, then he needs to be vindicated in that way. And I'm not going to back down from that. And if we were wrong, I'm going to say that we were wrong because it wasn't the right thing to do. 22 years of somebody's life is a long time. Like you said, you're the Commonwealth. You're a strong entity that could take away somebody's liberty and freedom potentially for the rest of their life. So make sure that you're sure. What do you feel? What are your feelings? I'm not asking you about the case itself, but I'm asking you about your feelings and seeing all the things, because media can be harsh sometimes. And I think that's the reason why people are resistant to come on podcasts and give interviews. I get it. But you see all these things in the media, then you've met Mr. Ellis. You see the type of person that he is. He's a great guy. My Uncle Larry is Detective Ellison. He just retired from the police force, and I'm sure that you probably know him too. He stood beside him in a picture, and I had to look, and I'm like, oh my God, he's standing beside Sean Ellis. That let me know one thing. He didn't believe he was guilty. But that's not for me to say. My uncle is always a detective first. I've said that since I was 12, since he became a cop.
Larry,
Larry. There you go.
Oh my goodness, the world is so small.
It is very small. And so with that being said, he helped raise me because, as you know, my mom was a drug addict. She's been clean for a long time. Praise God. And we have a great relationship. So him and my grandmother decided to take me on. And I was a big deal. Like I said, I have a big personality and I was hard headed. But when I saw him standing beside Sean handing out toys some years back, I recognized then that this was a guy who got a wrong deal. And not just because I'm a convicted felon that I'm saying this. I'm saying this because this is what I believe. And when I saw you on the news saying, I'm not playing around with this. If this guy was treated unfairly, we owe him something. So how do you feel about being in that position where some people in the Boston police think he's still guilty?
Yeah. No, look, I think what a lot of the cases where people have been for decades, just clinging to their innocence, right?
Right.
We have a case, Mr. Foxworth, who was just released, and we null prossed it immediately, meaning saying we're not going to prosecute it again. It's over. It's
God.
done. You
Right.
don't have any probation, no parole, no nothing. Please go forth and close this chapter of your life and move forward with
Right.
goodwill, etc.
Right.
But I just think we choose finality over justice every day in the criminal legal system, and I won't do that anymore. Right.
Amen.
I think what trial 4 did in a really amazing way was
Yes.
synthesize, like in 8 episodes, um, just an amazingly corrupt time in our police department. And I warn people, right? There are, like you said earlier, there are absolutely excellent police officers, white police officers, Black, Asian, female, LGBTQ,
Right.
everything, right? But we had in the Sean Ellis case 3 police officers that were indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office. One of them turned on the other 2 to get no time. And by the way, we had multiple felonies that they committed, and they got 3 years. Remember, I told you about that guy that committed 1 felony and
Yeah.
got
Up to
25 years? Like, we have a system where what is it? Brian Stevenson likes to say, you are better off being rich and guilty than you are being poor and innocent. And so when you have a system where law enforcement is looked at as being above the law, right? Or, everything bends in their favor, when I feel like, wait a minute, you've had you have a higher duty than other people to make
right.
sure that you're not breaking the law, right? Like, you have a gun. I mean, and that's the bigger thing. As prosecutors, we have a lot of responsibilities too. We can't kill you. The police have the legal and lethal authority to kill you as the government. And then I come in afterwards to say, like, was it justified and reasonable, or was it a crime?
Right.
If you have that much power, we need to make sure we're getting the right people in these jobs. And so when I look at Sean, um, I look at how many times Rosemary Scarpiccio, his amazing criminal defense lawyer,
She
had
is.
to fight to get documents from our office,
Yes.
like decades, right? And because of her tenacity, right? Because of her which I love, right? And she needs it, right? Her
Right.
inability to say, no, you know what? I'm not giving this up. I know this is right. I believe this in my core. She
Right.
was able to finally sift through with the help of others and find a tie to Detective Mulligan, the man that was shot 5 times in the face, and the 3 convicted felons that were police officers, which
Right.
would have given them the sort of incentive to shut that investigation down as quickly as possible, to put the
Absolutely.
scent off of them and their bad behavior. So what I think it shows, Tawana, is just the corruption and the level of corruption that can happen. When we look at Whitey Bulger, right? All of us have seen one of the Whitey Bulger movies. Even if you haven't read all the cases, you know that there was corruption in and out of the FBI. He was an informant. They knew certain things. So we have to realize that the hypocrisy of looking at certain communities as being, filled with criminals, when we now currently have, what are we at, Tawana? Over 50 state troopers that have been indicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in 2020 and
Yes.
2021, right? Like, I'm not talking about 40 years ago. I'm talking about within the last couple of months. We have not 1 but 2 massive drug lab scandals in Massachusetts, where people were just able to sniff drugs, ingest them, lie about results. There was no audit function or oversight. People's lives were ruined about that. And those 2 women are in and out of jail and now on to a better life. There are some people that are serving time still, right, as a result of what they did. And we are working hard to undo that. But I get a lot of pushback a lot of pushback from judges, from the police, from conservatives. And, you know, we march forward because we're doing what's right.
Absolutely. And I pray that you continue to do what's right. And I think that your personality is such is that right is right and wrong is wrong. It doesn't matter who you are. And I think that that's what I want to bring to the people who are listening is that you are a person who has to take things one day at a time, one step at a time, and change does not happen overnight. Look at how long racism has existed, and it hasn't been abolished yet, even though there was the Martin Luther Kings and the Malcolm X's and all of those great people that fought hard for us, the Rosa Parks, and still we're still dealing with this today in 2021. So I implore everybody to kind of give DA Rollins a break, please, because it's a little bit much. But on to the last question, because I know that you have something coming up. And I really wanted to know this for me, because I have been through the system a lot. And I have found more often than not with prosecutors, I do have mitigating circumstances. And by the way, I'm in school to be an attorney now too, because I feel like experience is the best teacher. And at this point, I looked at prosecutors and said, they really suck. Like, how can you keep sending me to jail? Don't you see that it's not working, that there's a bigger problem? And is this about punitive damages? Is this about discipline versus punishment? What are we doing here, DAs? Because if I'm out on the street doing well and I'm fighting a case, do you really want for a nonviolent offense? Are you saying you want to send me back to jail, even though I've been 2 years on probation, out of trouble, and I committed a crime 3 years ago? No, don't ignore the crime. I did it. But how do we continue to go forward so that people are not continuing to lose? And so for me, I need to know what the prosecution's office, besides probation, besides, they have that thing where they go to do the drug testing and they take the classes. And besides all of those things, not counting the probation, the pretrial, or other court sanctioned processes, what is it that young men and women can do in the city to if we're going to be held accountable for our actions, and if you want real change, and if you want people to really come out and be better people, what programs can you, the DA's office, implement that's going to help us get to the next level? Because sometimes, Rachel, let's be honest, in families we have no guidance, so we act out in ways that are not appropriate and get us to your office where the police have us in handcuffs, and it is what it is. But when you see these types of cases, when does the DA's office step in and say, you know what? I know this looks bad. I know that she stole a lot of money. I didn't have a drug problem, so it made it even worse for me. But if you look back at my past, I was abused, mental health, foster care, all of those things played a part in who I became. It just explains it. It doesn't excuse it. Do you take those things into consideration and say, well, maybe there needs to be some programming out there. There needs to be some changes within the system that says not everybody has to go to jail. Not everyone has to see the inside of a prison, because I've been in the system since I was 5, DA Rollins, in foster care, which means that I'm like a chameleon and I can adapt to those environments. So that was not going to change me. It actually pissed me off. Yeah. So I want to know, what is it that the DA's office can do to rectify some of this, to funnel some of this? I finally had a judge say to me, Judge Crump, if you don't go to mental health and you get out this time, you're going back to jail for real, because there's just no way that you don't understand that this is an issue and I need you to address it so you don't continue to do this. Yeah. I went to jail 7 times before I had a judge say that to me. Oh. And my lengthiest sentence, as I said to you, was out of your office. 5 years. Bam. Hey, you didn't send me an invitation and say commit this crime and now this is what it is. But I also feel like sometimes DAs are so overclogged with different cases that sometimes the judge asked on my last sentence, he asked the DA, did you read the report from the psychologist? He goes, no, Your Honor, I haven't had time. He goes, well, we've taken a break because you're going to read this. You're not going to keep coming in here and asking for time for this girl if you're not going to help her. If you can see her records 40 pages for the same crime, help her. You can't keep saying jail is the only option. So do you have any plans to do some programming from within your department to help people get to a better place?
100%. And I love everything that you're saying. So part of the requirement, I think, is, we now mandate in training, it's not just who I was as a candidate. It's who you have to be in order to work in my office. So any ADA that's in the Boston Municipal Court, which has 8 different divisions, right? And our Chelsea District Court, those are our 9 in municipal and district. And then we, of course, have Suffolk Superior, Mass Appeals, and the Supreme Judicial Court.
Right.
And we have juvenile and some other ones around, but you have to have gone through our specific training, not just the ones of this is how you put in a piece of evidence that's paper evidence. This is how you put a gun in. No, not just that stuff, how to be a lawyer. It is, you have training from criminal defense lawyers, judges, returning citizens, victims of all types of crime, violence, sexual crimes. We mandatory, you have to visit Nashua Street in order to start working. If you have not, and it's a tour, and believe me, Tawana, I am aware, a tour of Nashua Street is nothing like being fingerprinted and brought into Nashua Street, but at least they know where it is. They know, they hear that click, clink of the bars when they close behind you. They experience that process of where people are fingerprinted, where they go, where the infirmary is, right? Where the ICE unit is when there were ICE detainees, right? Which side, which cell, where you can take the cooking class, where you are out playing soccer or the garden, or they see all of this. So they understand, I hope, even culturally competent about, I've actually experienced and gone to the place I have to send people, because there are studies that show if I don't even know where I'm sending you, and I look at you and don't even see us as equals, or maybe even you as a human, right? You're just a criminal. You're just a name or a number, or, when you get moved around, it's the body. They refer to you as the body, right? Not even as Miss Bowles, right? Or Miss Rollins or Tawana, or, it's the body is on its way. And so we have to be better at making sure, A, I'm training people better, but B, I agree with you. Like, why are we being punitive? Like, justice should be swift, but needs to be right. Okay. So I have already told my staff, I don't want to hear about a takedown that happened 5 years ago. Now, I will give you this year, because COVID's been crazy, right? And since March, we've had no trials. I had to fight like hell to get 2 different grand juries up, because of course, with the global pandemic, Tawana, we still have had 50 homicides since March, right? So crime doesn't stop. We have to keep making people feel like they're safe, even in a global pandemic, with all the other things happening in these communities. But, for me, I look at it and say, we have to make sure that people know it should be we should be rehabilitating you, right? It is a Department of Corrections. It is a house of corrections. Where are the corrections coming from, right? If we are just housing you and you come out more mentally ill, more violent, and less employable, that is a full loss, because the recidivism rate is high. It's 67% that you're going to go right back in and do it. And I have heard stories from my sister and others, when you're about to, leave, the COs will say, we'll see you in a couple months. It's like, how, yeah, you'll be, but how is that uplifting and supportive, right? But we need to be better at making sure that the Office of Returning Citizens for the City of Boston, that our state systems, that EOPS, the Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, that they have programs in place for people while they are incarcerated. Because you know this better than me, the currency in jail and prison and in carceral facilities isn't love and support and happiness, it's violence, right? And, if we gave people the belief that they could actually become better if they took these anger management classes or mental health treatment, like assistance. And I'm not just talking about medicating everyone. I'm talking about speaking to someone about the traumas you've experienced, having a licensed clinical person look at you, as well as a doctor, right? And a nurse that can look at you physically and say, you are harmed, we need to get you to BMC or Mass General. But a person that can look and say, this person has at least 5 diagnosed DSM-5 mental health disorders, at least 5. how are we helping them in that sense?
Right.
If people believed they could get that, I really, whether I'm naive or not, I really think they would be involved in more programs. If
Yep.
they believed that the training that they received at, when they were in a carceral facility would actually land them a job, that
Right.
people were thinking beyond the one step of let's get you trained as a sous chef or a laborer,
Right.
but let's also now hook you up with the building trades
Right.
and with a few restaurants that know that they have committed to hiring people that have a quarry, right? And
Absolutely.
have like, why aren't we thinking that way? So I spend most of my non-working hours trying to do that, and I want to give props to the Rocas and UTECs of the world, but
Mhm.
that's only a small population. That's overwhelmingly men, 15 or 17 to 24. What about somebody who's a woman and 22, right? Or 30, right? Or younger?
Right.
What are we doing to help them? And that's where I think new progressive prosecutors and legislators who are thinking, Ayana has been open and honest about having a loved one that was incarcerated. Liz
Yes.
Miranda has been honest about having a loved one that's been murdered, right? My office is handling that homicide of her brother. Um, she has loved ones that, and I'm not telling anyone's story. This is their
Right.
story they've shared.
Right.
I'm just
I've heard.
saying,
Yes. Yes.
when you have that lived experience, that courses through your pen when you're writing that legislation. You know
Absolutely.
what it feels like to be translating for your parents when they're trying to understand what's going on, what happened, he was arrested for what. you
Right.
know that's what I love about the moment we find ourselves in, and I believe this truly. We are just getting better because there's more people pushing behind to say, I love to hear that you're going to be a lawyer. And whether you choose to be an amazing criminal defense attorney to hold my office to the highest standard and sue us if you must, right? I'm
I
serious.
will.
Yeah, I'm dead serious though.
Yes. Yes.
But also, or a prosecutor, or you run for DA and you say, I'm gonna even, you think Rachel Rollins changed the system. Wait until you see a Bowles administration. What
Right.
I love is there are now people that it's not just me. There's lots of other people that could be the district attorneys of Suffolk County.
Right.
Yes, I happen to be the first woman and the first person of color in who cares? I'm
Right.
not going to be the last. I
Right.
promise you.
Right. So, DA Rollins, I said to you initially that I was going to field the questions that are, because we're on live. And so, with us being on live, people are asking questions. I just am not looking at them. But I would like to give you the opportunity to answer them yourself. Usually, when I
Sure.
interview somebody, I don't answer their questions because I'm not them. And
Yep.
although I would like to, but there's lots of them. So I'm going to send them over to Renee. And I just want to let all the viewers know, if you are asking questions to DA Rollins, just be sure to know that I follow through. I kind of stalk people. So, and she knows this. So I am going to send the questions to her assistant, give her a week to answer them, and then you'll see me again after she looks over everything and approves the show. That she's going to get back to you. That's what she's here for. She's here to answer questions from the community. She's a part of the community. She lives in the community, and she wants to see change happen. It may not happen overnight, but I think that we all need to stop being ignorant in the sense that because she's a DA, that she's not approachable. She actually is. She's somebody's mother, somebody's daughter, somebody's sister. And as she said, she has people in her life that are in the system right now. So she knows what it's like. We all know what it's like. And we're in challenging times where everything is at crisis because of COVID-19, because of what's happening in the Capitol, because number 45. Let's
Ugh.
just give each other a break. Give DA Rollins a break. Give her a chance to change some things. She's one of many one of few that wants to change some things. And being a Black woman, it's not easy. It's not.
Well, I am so glad I came on today. I'll call Lizzie because we were chatting about you before. So she was like, oh, she's so smart and great. And I can't wait till you do it. So I really appreciate you reaching out, and let's not make this be the last time that we talk. Renee will absolutely get me those questions over the weekend. I'll probably try to answer some of them and we'll get them back to you within a week. But thank you for what you're doing, and educating our community, because it's not that we're not brilliant. we're brilliant. We're just tired, right? And we're homeschooling, and we often don't have the jobs that you can Zoom into. We have to show up at work and deal with, you know, look, what we just saw on TV last week, a noose erected, a Confederate flag waved around. That has a different impact on our community than it does the rest of America that's watching that. They might feel nothing seeing that, whereas there are some of us that have chills running through our body knowing what that means. Just like the guy with a sweatshirt on that said Camp Auschwitz,
Mhm.
basically supporting Hitler and the genocide of Jews. Like, that's what is pumping in our brains right now. We just are trying to live and do good for our families. We as elected officials will be better to make sure we explain things to you in words you understand, because we need to make sure we are giving it to you in your native language in a way that's understandable and coherent, and then getting you involved or letting you know when you need to show up, right? So thank you. I'm really excited. This has been a really good experience for me.
And thank you. And this is not the last time you hear from me, because I'm trying to bring a program here to Massachusetts that will change the game for everybody, so that everybody can win, no matter what system you're in. It's time
I
for
love it. We'll stay in touch. I'll
All right,
talk to you
well,
soon. Be
thank you,
well.
everybody, to want to be at Not Your Normal Conversation, sitting down with DA Rollins. Stay tuned for my next interview on Sunday. Thank you for joining us, everybody.
Bye.